So welcome to another episode of the Life of Elvis podcast. I'm your host Elvis, and today with me is Deanne Rose, a holistic sex, love and relationships coach. So really happy to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me here, Elvis. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so tell us a bit more about yourself then.
Well, I live over here in Austin, Texas, and I am a sex, love, and relationship coach, as well as an ecstatic birth doula. And I mainly work with women at this point in basically helping them to remember the power of their sexuality, reclaim it, and then rise into the best version of themselves through that connection to their life force energy.
Mm-hmm. So what got you into these topics?
Well, I really came into this after my divorce back in 2015. So I had been married for like 22 years, and I have two daughters who are young adults now. They're 23 and 21. But I was kind of just thrown off the cliff into finding a new life for myself, and so really came into my that hero's journey. So the deep depths of that darkness of like, who am I and what have I become and where am I going? And I was really just connected, and I started just really connecting to my intuition, following the breadcrumbs that were leading me into discovering more about my sexuality. I remember meeting this beautiful woman who, in my mind, was like the total definition of a divine feminine. She was strong, she was beautiful, she was confident, she was connected to her sexuality, and I was like, I want to be that way. And I got into sex, love, and relationship coaching year-long program, and half of that program was a deep dive into my own being and working through shadows and old belief systems, and just understanding that the power has always been within me. And from that became the confidence, and then I'm like, every woman needs to know this. So I just made it my journey and my passion to just share my wisdom and share my work.
Yeah, that's the thing, we come up with something really profound, something that most people don't talk about, and you just want to share it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of shame and guilt, I think, in this world around sexuality, and also I think we can see what has happened as a result of repressing our sexual energy. You know, I like to say, you know, when you press something down, you know, it's got to come out, and it usually comes out sideways, and that's the drama, that's the trauma in your life, and that's how we, you know, those are our shadows, and how we just react to things instead of just using discernment and wanting to respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, that's the thing with our society, is that we don't know how to use our sexual energy properly. So it goes one of two ways. Either we repress it, suppress it, which, like you say, it comes out and it comes out in a many times very nasty ways. Like you see, priests molesting children, and it's like the extreme case, but that's what happens when you repress all this stuff and you don't utilize it in some way. And the other way that most people choose to is just to overindulge and use it, abuse it. All this.
Yeah.
So, and it's always
an addiction.
Yeah, exactly. Everything can be an addiction, really. And as usually, the right way is somewhere in the middle.
Yes, yeah. There's that balance, right? There's, I mean, you look at the yin and the yang symbol, right? There's a purpose for that. You know, there's a balance that we need to bring into our lives.
Yeah, definitely. So what kind of techniques do you use to bring this balance?
I start working with my women initially with more shamanic tools and energy work of awakening their womb space, and then we go into using tools and techniques for what is called yoni de-armoring, and that in itself is extremely healing for women. So if you think about it, it's basically like a yoni massage, but the main point of it is to release tension, release soreness, bring in more blood flow so there's more sensation. And then on the energetic realm, is the healing, the releasing of energies that are stuck in there from not only the woman's lifetime experiences here, but also the collective that's just been passed down in the DNA. So it's an extremely healing and opening process for women, and that gets them started on their journey with me in coaching. And I bring in some Taoist teachings with sexuality, some Tantra teachings, and then we also work into, looking at old belief systems and rewriting a narrative, a story that is more beneficial for where she is right now in her life.
Mm-hmm. Sounds very interesting, to be honest. Because I think the science doesn't really like this idea, but it seems to be true that a lot of the trauma that people hold is stored somehow in certain body parts, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of it is, in our sexual organs and our pelvic floor. I mean, this pertains to men as well. And our heart, I think, is a big area too that holds a lot of trauma, a lot of walls we put around our heart sometimes.
Yeah, way too many. So tell me a little bit more. You mentioned Tantra. We spoke about this a little bit in our call before this podcast. Tell me a bit more about that, because that's something I always keep hearing about, but it's one of those things I never go on to look into properly. Yes.
So, I mean, it's been around for forever. So there's a lot of teachings out there, and it seems to be split into a classical tantra and neo tantra. Excuse me. So neo tantra has kind of become what a Western version of tantra. So it's been developed so the average person can start these practices a little bit more easier into our lifestyle. What I really love about Tantra, and for me, is the deep soul connection. Not only with my partner, but also with the divine. Like to me, it has taught me to go into sexual union with a more ritual, more sacredness. And from my experience coming from that point, it makes sex so much more fulfilling. And also there's no agenda per se. Like you going in with whatever intention that you want, but it's mostly just for pleasure and connection. And how that is going to look is different at any time, because it makes you more present. Like what is something that I need right now? What does my body need right now? How do I want to connect with my partner right now? And for me, just adding that into my sex life, it actually sparks it more. So it takes out that the routine or the mundane, or like, I have to have an orgasm or something like that. It's like, no, we're just going to go into it, with the intention of connection, with bringing pleasure to each other, and seeing it where that goes. So that's what I really love about using Tantra in that aspect of sex. Of course, you don't have to use it there. There's whole other studies, but it just really gets you, I think, just connected to your divinity and the understanding that you are a spiritual being having this physical experience. Mostly we're physical beings here, and this is a way for us, I believe, for us to connect to divine, connect back home, kind of back to the mothership, I guess, to get, just get connected and rejuvenated and like, okay, now I'm ready to go out back into this 3D heavy world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's also the huge difference that we have between sexuality, how we understand it here in the West, including like psychologists, sexologists, and all those people, and how it's being perceived and practiced in other cultures like India, Tibet, China. You mentioned Taoist practices, which I tapped into a little bit. Over there, like you say, it's something sacred. It's something that can bring you closer to the divine, let's call it that way, for lack of better terms, or the Tao, whatever your particular bent is. And just something more, something that can really connect you to another person, which dissolves the boundaries between you and the other person. Whereas in our society, it's a lot, obviously not always, but a lot of it is just about pleasure coming from a place of ego. I want something from this other person.
Yes, yeah, just there's a objectification there.
Yeah, and disconnection.
Yes, instead of seeing that other person as a mirror of yourself, as a divine in human form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's I think you mentioned like it's there is a place in Chinese medicine where sexual union is prescribed as medicine because it's so healing, to bring
sure
those endorphins, the oxytocin and all that is healing to our nervous system. I mean, you might be able to. I was watching somebody talk. They were a sex therapist or a sex. They did research and they found that people could actually go off of their antidepressants if they when they started having more sex, either with themselves or with other people, because it was like this feel good hormone that got released and they didn't need to be on these prescription pharmaceuticals anymore.
Can imagine. Well, antidepressants are not that good to begin with anyway. I mean, there was some studies that show that they don't work much better they don't work better than placebo. Now, I've spoken to a lot of people that are on my podcast. I've heard a lot of people who are super knowledgeable and say the same. I mean, they're just no good, really.
Yeah, I think they have more bad side effects than good, and it decreases your libido as well. So
many times the side effect is suicidal tendencies, and it's like,
right.
Dude, that's what you want to prevent.
Isn't it odd that is? Like, you hear these side effects of these prescriptions and it sounds a lot worse than what you actually have.
Yeah, exactly.
Goodness.
And just such a huge contrast. I remember reading this book about Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, and over there it was unacceptable for some kind of medication to have side effects. It's such a huge difference to what we have over here now.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like they wouldn't use anything that caused a negative reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
back to Tantra a little bit more. You said you practice more of the Neo-Tantra, don't you?
I do. That's really what I got, trained more into that. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what's the difference between the classical, the old one, original one, and the new one?
From my education, as I know now, classical is more philosophies, principles. They did use more yoga in there, more meditation. The aspect of sex in classical tantra is very, very small. And then when it got kind of switched over a little bit, when it came more over to the West, if I remember correctly, there was a couple people that really, back in the, I think in the 60s and 70s, that really started the movement, and they were actually, sex therapists or on that path. So they added more of the sexuality into the Tantra. So I think that's where people more now think of it. But I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think we need so much healing around sexuality that if this gets them into wanting to get dive a little bit more deeper into Tantra, then they can get more back, and then they can go into the more of the principles and more of the esoteric practices of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we need all the help we can get right now over here. And if this is a little like a stepping stone, it's not too messed up compared to the original, then it's going to be helpful. Because even with yoga, that's one thing I don't like about it. Because it's what we do over here in the West, and we call it yoga. It has almost nothing to do with the original yoga.
Right, with all the
asanas
and the routines, and yes.
Then you combine it with also other things like Pilates, which no one really knows what it is and stuff. So yeah. I mean, things get distorted the more you go out, right? Yeah, you have to be careful. But again, if it helps someone to get into, to help them improve their lives and to get interested in the original thing, that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Just you have to make it accessible, because not a lot of people have the opportunities to go away to study in India or and into China and to get all this education and be totally immersed in that. So yeah,
exactly. So what kind of techniques do you use within this Neo Tantra? Because I'm just asking for I'm sure a lot of my listeners, they have no idea what this is, how it works,
Yeah. So what I love, there's a few practices that are just really simple. Well, they're accessible, they're simple to do, and again, you could do it with yourself or with a partner. And one of them, and I've held workshops on these, and it's called the 5 senses ritual, and it awakens our 5 senses, because that is how we become more in touch with our bodies, get more connected to our bodies. We can get more connected to our partner, because then we can also know what we like and what we don't like, and develop the voice to ask for what we like, and have the boundaries to say what we don't. So something that in this workshop is just very, very simple. I take chocolate for the taste, feathers for touch, there's music for the sound, and each person takes the time with each other and just uses these different tools to stimulate the 5 senses on the other person's body. And it starts to make the other person more aware of pleasure and their own sensuality, of what makes them feel good. Another really easy thing to do with your partner is, what I love is eye gazing. So I like being able to sit together with my partner in eye to eye, which is very intimidating at first, because there's that saying, the eyes are the mirror to the soul. So these, this person, even though you might have been with them for so long, you might not have really looked into their eyes for an extended period of time. So that it could be very deep as well as very triggering as well. So it's a nice practice to do, to get really comfortable and seeing, where you have resistance in that, and something to look at. And then I liked also to do again, very simple technique to do together is called circular breathing. So really connecting the breath together with each other and and moving it through your chakras together in a nice big loop. Again, it's creating like this microcosmic orbit all, around both of you that kind of creates this little bubble of light and love around you. So those are just a few very simple things to bring in, and just adding your own flavor to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, whilst we were talking about the eye gazing, it just came to my mind. I can't remember who exactly was saying this, or which occasion it was, but he and there's a group of people they were told to make pairs and just look into the other person's eyes for a few minutes or so. Mm-hmm. So this person and this other guy started looking into each other's eyes, and short moment after, the other guy just started crying. So it sounds very simple, but it can be pretty profound.
Yes. I mean, you're being seen, and that there's so much vulnerability that comes up with that, and you brought up ego just a little while ago, and when you do that, you transgress that ego. You're just purely your truest essence right there being seen.
Mm-hmm.
It's powerful. Yeah,
definitely. And that's what we need more of, anything that dissolves our egos, because on the surface level it looks like we are separate beings. I'm no, in some way, that I'm myself, I'm not you. In some way it appears that way, at least, but when you dig down deeper, it's so not true. And too much ego, that's what's destroying our society right now.
Yes, yeah, because too much ego, it covers up the compassion, it covers up the empathy. And I feel you there. Yeah, I mean, we are all connected, but we also chose to come here, and we knew about the separateness. But it's that remembering that we can be separate, but we're also connected. If you can start getting that awareness and that understanding, you're right. We really could have a much more healthier society. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like Terence McKenna said at some point. He said that ego is good to know which mouth to feed, but that's about it, pretty much.
Yes.
So, in the techniques that you use, do you use anything to transmute or utilize sexual energy?
Yes, and I think some people might have heard of the term sex magic. So what that entails is using your sexual energy, and again, the way I've been taught to do this practice is connecting to the chakras. So whether you're in with your partner or you're in with your self-pleasuring, it's using the intention to bringing pleasure into your body and moving the energy up through your chakras, starting down at your root, moving it up and up as the pleasure and the energy increases. And with this practice, it usually comes to an orgasm, where at the time of the orgasm, the energy it comes out through your crown, and then out, like that's your intention of your manifestation. That's what you want to use your sexual energy for, to create, and then breathing it back down into your body. You don't have to orgasm to have to generate your sexual energy. In fact, actually, not orgasming is the better way to keep the energy in, and using your breath to make that flow through your body. So both men and women can do this, and women, I think women have a little easier time, because we can be multi-orgasmic. We don't necessarily ejaculate, so we just can kind of keep riding the waves of this orgasm, and breathing in this energy, and just really nurturing it, and inviting it to become bigger. Men need to learn that, orgasm and ejaculation are separate. You don't necessarily, you can have an orgasm as a man and not ejaculate. However, you need to learn that you need to become more embodied in your body to know when that time is coming. So, knowing when you're going to not go over the edge and pulling back, and then just keeping your energy in there, and then starting it over again. So it's kind of like this back and forth movement without going over the edge into ejaculation. Because for men to ejaculate, that's their life force energy coming out, because that's how they create life. And that's fine. But the more you ejaculate, the more of your life force energy goes out. So it is a really good practice for men, especially, to learn how to to orgasm without ejaculating, and use their sexual energy, keeping it inside, to create and manifest in their life, in their world.
Mm-hmm. And did you learn this all from the Tantra or some other or is it straight from the Taoist techniques from China?
Yeah, just lots of books read, that's for sure, and that's what I learned as a Taoist practice. That I remember reading. They actually have recommendations of how many times a man should ejaculate in a month, depending upon his age, and just for his better health. And it actually was interesting to me to hear that once a man kind of got over like 70, like he shouldn't ejaculate at all, because he needs to keep that life force energy inside.
Do you remember the number for like someone in the 20s, 30s, roughly speaking?
Yeah, it's not that much. I was just showing my partner, and he's 55, and his age, it's only twice a month that he should actually ejaculate. So, if you kind of go back, it's, I think from 20 to 30, it's probably, I wouldn't say more than 6 or 8 times a month. Mm-hmm. It's a lot. I think it's a lot less than you would actually think.
Compared to what most people do and experience, it's not that much. Mm-hmm. And I got into this stuff. Martial arts, that was my gateway drug, right? Mm-hmm. So that I just got into a rabbit hole, and so I went through, all these martial arts, like karate, some styles of kung fu and stuff, towards Qigong philosophies, and within Qigong, which is the Chinese art of mastering your qi, or life force energy. Within that, there's so much to learn from them, and some of the practices. I read the books from Mantak Chia, which are really interesting. I remember reading the books. One was for men, one for women, and both of them super interesting. I remember in that book, I'm not sure if it was Mantak himself or someone else, because there are some testimonials from people who use these techniques, mm-hmm. which are good to read and very interesting. But someone said that Western psychology and sexuology, they're kind of like in the nursing school. Is that mm-hmm. right? Or like elementary school, very first years.
Oh, okay, yes, yeah.
Whilst, yeah. Whilst the Taoists, and I would say even some of the tantric masters, they're already at college or university. And when you really study this stuff, it seems really true. Because first of all, this Qigong, mastering your energy, it definitely works. I'm talking from my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned, the microcosmic orbit, that's a big part of it. Because like in some Indian techniques, like Kundalini Yoga, you take the energy from the base of your spine, and it goes up, and then it just floods all the energy channels, and it can be messy at times. But the Taoists have a slightly different approach, where you also take the energy up your spinal column or all the way to your head, but then you also bring it down. It's kind of safer. So that's a big part of it, and I tried this stuff, and it really works.
Yes.
And yeah, like you said, when someone ejaculates all the time, you're losing out a lot of energy.
Yes.
Right? For women, also through orgasms to some extent, but for you, it's mainly menstruation that's biggest loss of energy, isn't it?
Yes, and you know that can go on a whole other topic of why it's very important for women to honor their cycle, their moon time, and where society hasn't put up the, you know, it doesn't have the awareness to make it possible for women to take the time off that they need during this moon time to regenerate, to just basically be. I mean, that it's actually a very intuitive time in a woman's life where she could really get a lot of different ideas and downloads and, you know, connections to the worlds at that time. But there's not a lot of places where women are still able to. I mean, they used to have a red tent where women in the villages used to go and gather and just be with themselves without, you know, men around. They were just with women sharing their wisdom and just being in their cycles together. So I think that's definitely a disservice that we've done to women, is not honoring that time.
Yeah, that's true. In general, it's basically about being more connected to nature, not just the nature around us, but also the nature within us.
Yes.
And this is also one of the instances where we just moved away so far from it that it's just not serving us at all.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, and so I was saying, with the energy, like at the beginning I said that over here we either suppress our sexual energy, our sexuality, so it comes out in all the nasty ways, or we overindulge in it. So these techniques that we were talking about, whether it's the Taoist, Tantric, that's really the middle ground, where you're obviously not living like a monk or something, but you're also not wasting away all this energy. Instead, what you do is taking it back into your body. You know, like I mentioned the microcosmic orbit. That's one of the purpose of it, that you take it in and you circulate it, and then that helps with it can help with anything you do in your life. Like from anecdotally, we all heard this boxing coach that told this trainee, don't have sex for I don't know how many days before the fight, right?
Yeah.
I think Muhammad Ali was talking about something like that. And you know, scientists are like, oh, this is nonsense and stuff, but it does really work. I mean, even on myself, I can tell that there's a massive difference when I have sex and ejaculate, and when I rather still have sex, but I pull it back. You know, like you mentioned before, don't have an orgasm, don't ejaculate, take the energy back, recirculate it, and it just makes a huge freaking difference. Instead of just feeling a bit drained, which most men these days are like that. They are just drained from this life force all the time. It's not a good state to be in. aside from the porn addiction and all the stuff, which is basically like taking heroin or something.
Yeah, no, and
Yeah.
I mean, I truly believe, like, we need the strength of our men now. They need to be strong
Now more than ever.
Yes, right. So, you kind of look at that. It's like, why was all this stuff kind of put out there for temptation? Like, was there an agenda behind that?
Yeah, it makes you think, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to pay for everything really these days, but this stuff is, you just type in one website and you got it.
But our sexual energy is free within us. We don't need to really go outside of ourselves to tap into that. And yeah, like you said, the tantra is a way to get to that balance where you're not, you said, not living like a monk. You're still having and honoring your sexual energy, but you're utilizing it in a more conscious, and I think that's the word, is more conscious way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at the end of the day, sexual energy, it really seems to be the most powerful energy that we have in our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even in Chinese medicine, they say basically our brains run on this energy. It's super powerful.
It really is. It really is. And and as you were talking about the microcosmic orbit again, I think it's a practice that unless you actually do it, you really don't understand it. It has to be something that it has to be experienced. Like all of this, like your experience of when you ejaculate and when you don't. Like you've had that experience, you know the difference, and you can embody that. And I think this is what this work is you can talk about, I'll tap into my sexual energy, and but you really have to have the experience of in your life, like being able to say, wow, that is, I feel so much different, or that I was able to really show up and manifest this in my life because I feel my life force energy is stronger.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also, like I said, I'm just scratching the surface with this stuff, but still, it was like some of the experiences is mind blowing. I believe that it's also one of the reasons why I also look younger than a lot of other people my age. Obviously, it's the fact that I train, I eat healthy and stuff in the house, but usually when people ask me how old I am, they always guess me like 6 years younger, roughly, give or take.
Yes. No, I truly believe it. I think it is the fountain of youth.
Yeah, that's what Taoists were also saying. And we have it all within us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think our bodies were made to live a long time. Unfortunately, there's a lot of circumstances we can't control. I mean, we have to breathe the air that's here, but there's some things that we still have control of, and choices that we can make that will better ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is with all of these things like eating healthy and exercising, all that stuff. People tend to think that you have to live like a monk, that you have to not enjoy the pleasures of life and just all that stuff. But it's actually the opposite that is true. Obviously it takes more effort, that's for sure, but then you get so much more out of it. It's so much more interesting, it's so much more fun, you feel better, you don't have to wait for 5 hours at the doctor's office every week.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And and it's that choice, and there is that time period where it could be a little uncomfortable, especially like if you haven't eaten healthy for a long time. It probably won't be won't be comfortable for a little bit as your body gets used to what the good stuff you're putting in and detoxifies. However, you do feel better afterwards, and there is that balance too. We're actually human, so it's okay to, I believe, if you want to have something that's sweet and sugary sometimes, that's fine, because if that makes you, it brings pleasure like that without judgment. I think it's when we start judging ourselves, like, oh, I shouldn't eat that, and then you eat it and then you feel bad about yourself. It's like, no, just embrace it, like, all right, this is really what I want right now, and then enjoy it and then move on. You don't have to hold on to guilt or shame about, there's too much of that out there.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about moderation. Once in a while, if you have a cake or something, you'll be just fine. But don't have it all the freaking time. It's like all the times people tell me, but it's okay to have it sometimes. But then you look at what they're doing, and they're having it all the time. Like,
sometimes goes all the time. Yes.
Yeah. And back to sex and stuff. Yeah. Also, with these techniques, it's not like, for a dude who doesn't know anything about this, and now we tell him don't ejaculate, and it's gonna be like, what are you talking about? Again, I'm not a monk, but here's the thing: if you do these techniques, you're gonna get so much more out of it, even in terms of pleasure. In the Taoist techniques, I remember in one of the books there was a graph showing how the arousal goes in men. You go up, then your orgasm goes straight down the end. Obviously, you mentioned women are multi-orgasmic, but most men aren't.
Right.
Your orgasm, that's it, at least for a while, for most men. But with this, like you say, you go to the edge, then you do what you need to do to recirculate the energy. So you go a little bit down, but then you go higher. Again, do it again, start it down, and you keep going up and up. And there's no limit how far you can get, really.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Yeah, you can keep going, and the longer you go, the more pleasure you get, right?
Yeah. I've heard that's also the same with Tantra.
Yes, exactly. It is. I think in Tantra I think they refer to it as almost like a retention, retention of the ejaculation, which I don't know if that's a good word, but I like to use the word multi-orgasmic. Like if a man is multi-orgasmic, then he's not going to ejaculate right away. So, and it takes it takes practice. It takes control, right? And just like as women, would do the Kegels or reverse. Actually, I like teaching reverse Kegels for women. But men do the same thing. To strengthen. You have in order to what we're talking about is. In order for men to do this, they have to strengthen what is called the PC muscle. And it's got a huge, long name to it. But, that's the muscle that is going to make you multi-orgasmic and be able to control your ejaculation when you're going to do that. And, I mean, the easiest thing how to do that is when you're going to the bathroom is stopping your urine flow. Just practicing that, and that's how you strengthen that muscle. It's very easy to do, and just like any other muscle, if it hasn't been used in a long time, it might be a little hard to feel it, or it might be sore after you practice it, but it gets stronger over time. So that's
exactly.
An easy practice for men to start. This is something I want to do.
I would say that's more like a test when you go to the toilet, if you can stop, midstream.
Yes.
But one of the exercises that I have learned is you don't have to go to the toilet to do it. You can do it like, you're sitting in the office, no one's going to notice. But
right,
it's
yes.
like you take you take a deep breath in, hold the breath, and then either you contract the muscles in your pelvic floor for 9-10 seconds or a bit more, depends, or you do it in pulses, so like
Right.
contract, release 9 times, then you breathe out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you can do it multiple times throughout the day, and also in the Taoist, just remember, Taoist techniques, they say that as you age, because one of the reasons why people get overweight and they break their bones when they fall as they age is because they don't train the muscles, and they usually all lose it, right? So you lose muscle mass, you're still eating the same amount of food as before, so you start piling on weight, because your all the fast twitch muscle fibers atrophy throughout the years. When you fall, there's nothing to help you, stop you from breaking your bones, right? That's why strength training is so important as you age. But the same thing goes for even your pelvic floor muscles, right? And in the Taoists say that as you age, because these muscles get weaker, you lose a lot of your sexual energy and your life force through this area of, and that just accelerates your aging process. And obviously, it's not going to help your sex life either.
Yeah, it's like just like this open funnel of leaking energy. Yeah, it's exactly, the pelvic floor is vitally important for our overall health as well as our sexual health, most definitely. Yeah.
And it also helps women with their orgasm, because a lot of women, they can't get an orgasm, but helping strengthening these muscles and gain control, it helps a lot, doesn't it? Also with the pleasure.
Yes, because when the muscles in the vagina are flexible and loose, then they can contract and expand and contract as they're supposed to. And then there's more sensation there. There's more lubrication. Yeah, it just more sensitivity. It makes it a win-win to start taking care of the pelvic floor. Yeah, and that's when I was talking about the yoni de-armoring. That helps keep the pelvic floor. Finding areas in there, because I think a lot of for women, like when Kegels come in, there's an understanding of, Kegels are there to tighten, but mostly a lot of women there have a very tight pelvic floor and vagina. They actually need to loosen it and strengthen it. So it's tight and weak. So we need to loosen and strengthen it.
So how do you do that then?
Well, through when I teach them how to we use a pelvic floor tool, kind of looks like this S shape, and that's where finding the trigger points, massaging the vagina, perineum massage helps as well. So that loosens it up, and then I actually teach a reverse Kegels, which Kegels was taught to. I left out the most important thing that I teach my women to use is the jade egg. So the jade egg is actually what's going to strengthen the muscles. So that's an egg that you put into the vagina. Again, these tools are used for both physical health, so it'll start strengthening the vagina muscles as we squeeze and release, and basically there's reflexology points as well in the vagina to different organs, so that's beneficial. But then energetically, it's also a good tool to just release all the trauma and all that negative energy within us into the egg, and then it gets transmuted out. So, but what I wanted to go back with the Kegels is what they call reverse Kegels is actually on the exhale. I teach my women to imagine the vagina opening up kind of like a lotus flower, and then inhaling it, the lotus flower closes up, and that's the squeeze. And then so it's because on the exhale, our pelvic floor muscles relax, And then if we inhale, we can squeeze and open them, and you strengthen it that way.
I'm just thinking, because I've heard this also, with the microcosmic orbit, when you do that, you also, like you say, you very gently contract and release the pelvic floor muscles.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it depends on which kind of breathing you use, because you said you relax on exhale, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it depends which kind of, because like in Qigong, for example, you use two different, up to you, I mean, really which one you use. That amongst other ones, there are two basic ones, which are kind of like the opposites. It's Buddhist and Taoist breathing. And the way you tense the muscles, it's the opposite. We talked about quite a lot of things on this podcast. So how can you use it to improve the relationship that you have? Because I know that it can make a massive difference, and that's what a lot of couples really need.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So they're definitely in relationships. It's important to keep communication and intimacy alive. And I do a lot of work with like new mothers, and working with them to still be their sexy mama and be a mama, and working through motherhood and still being a sexual being, because it's important for the relationship. So it really, in my opinion, it really comes down to communication between your partner and where each of you stand, your beliefs about sex, the importance it is for you in your life, and and the communication about what you like and what you don't like, which can be challenging because we're not really taught to talk about this subject. It can be vulnerable, but in my experience, that is, if you can't talk about that stuff, then the health of relationship, it's not going to be very sustainable. And so, and what I would say is when these things do come up in your talks, is it's not something that you should be talking about in the act of sex. It should be something talked about outside the bedroom in a very neutral spot, so no one feels the defensive or takes things personally, like really setting up the container for authentic communication about sex, about what is important for each of you. Doing it during the act isn't, it's one thing saying, oh, please, can you do something else? So, speaking up if something doesn't feel right, of course. However, being critical or offering advice at that time isn't always well received from either party. So what I suggest is the communication comes outside of the bedroom, but it needs to be there, because if our partner doesn't know what's important for us or what we like, if we don't know what's important to them or what they like, then here we go again, talking about we're coming at each other from being very separate, so there's no connection, right? So if we want to be in that middle balance of connection and sacredness, then we need to have this communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you need a lot of novelty also in your life, because when things get boring, it's no good.
Yes, and knowing where your partner stands on either trying different things, or I think it's one of those talks that really should be done at the beginning of all relationships because, right? I mean, you don't want to get into a place where either one of you are uncomfortable or not getting what you want. It's not good for either one. It could lead to resentment and, talk about things coming out sideways. It could be like, passive aggressiveness in the relationship, drama. Like no one benefits from that. So,
Yeah, that's true.
it just takes one person to have the courage to talk about it. It's amazing. Like when I start talking about this stuff with people, amazing how other people just chime in. They're like, oh, thank God, I want to talk about this stuff. I've been holding it in. So, having the courage to speak about this, be that one. And you'll be surprised. Your partner will probably just really want to, like, thank God, I really wanted to talk about this, but I didn't know how to, bring it up.
Yeah, I've heard that before too. Like, you open up about something, and then other people are like, "Oh man, I'm glad you're talking about that. It's not just me." Because many times people think that it's just them thinking a certain thing or having a certain problem, but especially in this age when we can connect from one continent to the other, like we are now, you can find people who have the same issues, and you're never really alone.
Never. No, not at all. Not at all. There's more people going through what you're going through than you realize.
Yeah, that's true. And with all the information that we have access to just through this small device that we carry in our pockets every day. I mean, we are really lucky. I always say this, to live in this age. You don't have to go all the way to Tibet to figure out things. You can just get an ebook or something and you're sorted.
Yes. And also on that note is also using your discernment as well. Especially when it comes to things around sexuality. Especially I think younger people who are just kind of coming in and there's so much out there and they're questioning, but it's learning to be true to yourself first. What is really true for you, and when you can come from that place of a certain knowing, at least, you don't always have to be, totally sure, but at least have a pretty good idea. Then, as you are bombarded with all this stuff that we have out there, you can use discernment of what is truly feeling good for you to explore more in. So you're not being persuaded into things that aren't really true for you, but you feel, you want to go along just because. I really want to encourage people just to really check in to make sure that, what is more true for you, and go that road and leave the others to someone else that resonates with those things.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, with a lot of the things that I got interesting over the years, when I first encountered them, there was a feeling that, yes, this is it. This is what I want to learn about. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And years later, now that I'm in my early 30s, and I look back, all the things when I had the feeling ended up playing a huge role in my life. Like, so much bigger than finishing school or something, right? So again, like, it's a lot about getting in touch with other people, the connection between you and other people, the connection between you and nature outside and as well within you. Getting in touch with your intuition and with who you really are, true core of your being. Which you'll probably find out there is no true self, but that's a whole other story. But you know what I mean.
Right. Yes, but our intuition is definitely the key, and it's trust. The work is to trust the intuition.
Yeah.
Because it's always, in my experience, the intuition is always the softer voice in my head, where the ego is the louder one. Like, it wants to be heard. Like, this, no, you do this, and that
and all the
softer
subconscious
voice.
programming that's very loud.
Yeah, and that's why, some of this work that we've been talking about helps you to go inside to take, be more present, so you can hear that softer voice, which is your intuition and or your highest self guiding you.
Okay, great. I mean, that was a really nice conversation. I think a pretty important one, to be honest. Because, again, we need to find the middle path, which is not going through this weird no-fap movement where you just suppress stuff, or this, the religious side where it's being demonized entirely, and on the other side, which is being presented by certain groups of people these days and stuff. The middle path is the way forward, and these techniques are super powerful. They definitely work. And it can hugely improve your life. So it was great talking to you. And before you go, I always ask a few questions to my guests at the end.
Okay.
So first question, if there was one piece of advice you could give to people, just one, what would it be?
Actually, I think just what I just did. Just take a breath. Just take a deep breath. Breathe. That will bring you back to the here and now, and put you on the right path all the time, always.
Great. Secondly, what does femininity mean to you?
Femininity? Is that what you asked? Femininity to me means, it means strength in flow and in connection to nature, like to the rhythms of and cycles of nature. To me, femininity is a flow and this strength and an intuitive knowing.
And what do you think is the meaning of life?
Meaning of life. The meaning of life. I think the meaning of life is to understand why we came here, what we came here to learn, and how our soul can grow. I think there's a reason why we all came here, and that's the meaning, is we search, we do what we need to do to become to that awareness of like that aha moment of like, oh, I get it now. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, I think because I have this in me personally, that's what got me into doing all these things. Learning about all this stuff. It's like, what is this all about? Why am I here? It's a pretty powerful question to ask.
Yes.
So where can people find you?
My website is deannerose.net, and I'm on Facebook as Deanne Rose, and Instagram under Deanne Rose Coaching. And I have a Facebook group for women called The Unbridled Woman, where I hold monthly online circles there and just talk a little bit more about sensuality and femininity in a more closed container as well.
Great. And as always, you will find all the links in the description below, whether it's Deanne or my services. So thank you very much for coming on my podcast.
Thank you, Elvis.
It was a great pleasure talking to you. You guys, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy these podcasts, give it a like, share, comment. It helps a lot. See you in the next one.